Hey guys, welcome to section 2. This is our next part of the logic chapter. And this chapter or this specific section has quite a bit of writing in it, so just be prepared to write some sentences. And we're just going to talk about a couple of vocab words through here. So the first one is a statement. So a statement is just a sentence that is either true or false. For example, I might make the statement 2 plus 5 is 7. And you could tell me it's true or it's false. Okay, so that's just a simple statement. They don't always have to be math related. They could be about anything as long as they can be true or false. And we usually represent statements with letters. So I wrote 3 different statements here. And what you'll usually see is a small letter off to the side, a lowercase letter with a colon, and then the sentence that comes after it. So when we refer to the sentence, the sun is bright, I usually will just use the letter P. So I might say statement P. Or if I want to talk about the sentence, it is raining, I might say statement Q. Okay, so you want to use these letters. It's a lot shorter to refer to the letter rather than saying the sentence over and over again. Okay, so I just wrote 3 examples of 3 random statements, and obviously all of these could be true or false depending on what we're asking. So the true or false part of it is where we talk about what's called the truth value. Okay, and truth value, you have 2 options, true or false. So if I ask you for the truth value of a statement, all I'm asking is it true or false? And you just have to write T or F. And sometimes you'll have to justify it. It just depends on what they're asking. Okay, so here's an example. It says state the given truth value, state the truth value of the given statement. So I have a statement R. It says a rectangle has 4 sides. So does a rectangle have 4 sides? Yes, it does. So I would say my truth value, and I usually abbreviate that TV. I'd say my truth value is true, or I could put T. It doesn't matter, whatever you prefer. And that's it. So really short. Sometimes they'll be really easy. Sometimes you might have to make sure that they are. Maybe you do a little research with it to make sure it's true or false, and then you go from there. Okay, but then we're going to get a step further where we talk about negation. So the word negation just means the opposite of the statement. And there is a symbol for negation. It's like the little squiggly line right here. Okay, so when we read negation, we usually use the word not. Okay, so right here, if I were going to negate my sentence from right above, where about the rectangles, I would say that this is read not are. Okay, so that's how we say this part right there. Okay, so we'd say not are, and then the statement, the negated statement would be a rectangle does not have 4 sides. So all I did was I took the original statement and I just changed it so that it's the opposite. So a rectangle does not have 4 sides. You don't have to change a bunch of words. Usually it's just as simple as adding the word not or organizing it just a little bit differently so it just has the opposite meaning. Okay, so I could also say something as simple as if my statement were, let's go back. Let's say my statement was it is sunny, and I asked you to find not P, then my statement would be it is not sunny, and you'd be done. Okay, so you can still have truth values for negated statements. It just might be different depending on if it's true or false once you've changed it. Okay? And then we're going to get into compound statements. So you've probably heard of compound sentences in English or something similar to that. It's the same concept. So a compound statement is 2 or more statements that are combined. Okay, typically we're going to be working with 2, but you could have more than 2. It could be 3, 4, 5, doesn't matter. So there are 2 types that we're going to work with. The first one is called a conjunction. Okay, a conjunction is also known as an and statement, and this is really important, the fact that it's going to be an and statement, because that means we're going to use the word and in our sentence. And it does have a symbol. It's like a little caret. Okay, so it's the little up arrow. So if I give this example here, it says I have 2 statements. I have math is awesome, that's statement P, and it says in statement Q, I study a lot. So if I ask for the conjunction, so this is how it'll be written, P, and then that little symbol means and, okay, Q, then I'm going to take those 2 sentences and combine them into one sentence with the word and in it. So I would say math is awesome, and I study a lot. So notice I bolded and underlined and because I have to have that word in there. That's very important. Okay, so make sure you include the word and in it. Now, when we're talking about compound statements, okay, we can have a truth value, but there's a little bit of a catch. Okay, so for example, I've got this two statements. T says 2 plus 2 is 4. Okay, so there's one statement. And then my second statement says dogs are animals. Okay, so if I'm going to ask you to write a compound statement, it might look something like this: T and G. So we could go ahead and write this out. We could say 2 plus 2 equals 4, and okay, dogs are animals. Okay, so there's my sentence. And you want it to read correctly. So if you have to add a few extra words so it actually reads like a nice sentence, then you want to make sure that you do that. Okay, it needs to be, it needs to have relatively proper grammar in it. So if I'm going to ask you what's the truth value, there's a little rule. Okay, for a compound statement that's a conjunction, so for an and statement, in order for it to be true, both statements have to be true. So if we look at that statement, okay, 2 plus 2 equals 4 and dogs are animals, is the statement 2 plus 2 equals 4 true? Well, yes, 2 plus 2 is 4, so I'm going to put a little t next to it. And then the second half of that, are dogs animals? Yes, so I'm going to put another t. So because both of these statements are true, my truth value is true. Okay, so they both have to be true in order for the whole sentence to be considered a true statement. Now, the catch is if any of those statements are false, okay, so even if one of them is wrong, then the whole thing would be a false statement. All right, so it's really important to make sure you know in conjunctions, so in and statements, both of them have to be true in order for the truth value to be considered a true statement. All right, and then the other one we have is a disjunction. It's just the opposite. So here, disjunctions are called or statements. Okay, so we're looking for the word or in our sentence, and it has the opposite symbol, so it looks kind of like a V. So I have two sentences here for you. You want to make sure you write these down. So the first one is P, and it says water is good for you, and then Q says 6 minus 4 equals 5. Okay, so two sentences, and we're going to write a disjunction. So when I combine this, it'll say P or Q, so that's how we read it, P or Q, and then I write my sentence out. So water is good for you, or 6 minus 4 equals 5. So we're writing a compound sentence that has the word or in between the two statements. Okay, now we can go to our truth value. So for this particular one, so if I ask you for the truth value, in a disjunction, okay, only one of them has to be true. Okay, so one or both have to be true in order for us to say the whole thing is a true statement. So it's a little different than the conjunction, because remember the conjunction both had to be true. Here, only one of them has to be true, and then we can go ahead and say the whole thing is true. So in this case, is water good for you? Well, let's just say that that's true. Let's just assume. Okay, so that's true. But is 6 minus 4 equal 5? Well, no. Okay, so 6 minus 4 doesn't equal 5, so we're going to call that false. Okay, so in a conjunction, this would not work. We'd say it's false. But in a disjunction, as long as one of them is true, then we can say it's true. And because water is good for you was a true statement, we can say that the truth value is true. Okay? So something very similar. Now I could do an example of this. Maybe I said that my statement was not P or Q. Okay, so remember not P means we negate. So we'd say water is not good for you, or 6 minus 4 equals 5. Well here, okay, the statement says water is not good for you. Well, we know water is. Okay, so that would be a false statement. And we also know that 6 minus 4 does not equal 5. So this would also be a false statement. So if I ask you for the truth value of this particular statement, because both of them are false, I'd have to automatically say it's false. Okay, so this one would be an example where a disjunction would not work because both statements are falses. So we'd have to leave it at false. Okay, so those rules are really important. Make sure you put those somewhere in your notes you'll refer back to. Put a star next to it, because you're going to see those quite a bit throughout this chapter. And then the last thing we're going to talk about, which will hopefully be the most familiar, is our Venn diagram. So I just went through one example here where we're just showing a bunch of data in a picture. And Venn diagrams are a great way to represent and or statements, or conjunctions and disjunctions. So what you'll see on your assignment is a Venn diagram, and they'll ask questions about the Venn diagram, and you just have to know where to get your numbers. So this first question says, how many people can attend the May or June meeting? So when we're looking at our Venn diagram, we want to look at any of the numbers that would be involved in May or June. So we've got 3 different numbers here. We've got 6 people who were in May. We had 14 people who were in June. And then we also had the people in the middle who could go to both. Okay, so those people would also be in May or June, so we have to count them as well. So we just have to add these 3 numbers together. So 6 plus 5 plus 14. So we get 25 people, okay, that could be in May or June, and then we'd be done. Okay, so you have to be careful, make sure you include the part that overlaps, because they are also going to be in May or June. Okay, and then it says in the second question, how many people can attend both meetings? Well, both meetings is the only place where they overlap, which would be here. So in this case, it would just be 5 people. Okay, so that one's really quick because that's the only place where they can go to May and June. And then lastly, where it says how many people cannot attend any meetings, well, all the ones in the circles mean they can attend. So the number on the outside would be the number of people that can't go in May or June. So you'd have to just put 2. Okay, so it's all just about interpreting the data. I could have asked you how many people could only go in June. Okay, and in that case, it would only be 14. Okay, because the 5 people in the middle could also go in May. So you have to pay attention to the wording of the Venn diagrams and make sure you're looking at the right numbers. But for the most part, you're just going to be adding some numbers together, and that's it. Okay, so if you have any questions about conjunctions or disjunctions or what it means to negate something, make sure you ask that in class. But that's the end of the section. So that's it. Thank you for listening.